with the developer to come up with a solution that is in the best interest of everybody.
Second. Does anybody else, since we seem to have most of it come from this side of the table, or is it pertaining to this one? Yeah, Councillor Jackson?
So can we recommend pushing it back beyond the back end of the Cobden Ag Hall and the arena?
Oh yeah, you can go.
Because to me, like, if I look at Boundary Road, or at Strelab Road, whatever it is, if we look at that and we know between the Pentecostal church and the farm and the curling rink, there is a big, huge ditch there. So, I mean, development is going to be very limited there on Boundary Road unless you start filling everything in.
Right.
To me, the development is going to be back beyond that ditch. You know, that just where the land lies, and I have no idea.
Well, the land will talk to us, yeah.
Yeah, and I think, not to go down that path, I think we need a concept plan. I think we need to understand from the developer what their goals are.
Exactly, that's where the developer comes in with the concept.
Yeah.
You know, and then you look at the capacity and the ability to service it, and you know, you work out a plan.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay. So if we don't identify it today, if they're going to, if we don't put it in pink today, it doesn't matter, is what you're saying.
No, what we'd be doing is putting a hatch line through it. You know, we would just take that. It's pink. I'm not good with colors. So we'd put like cross hatching through it and label it with a special, like I don't know, we call it urban exception 1.
Okay.
And then we would add a policy in OPA 11 that would correspond with that, roughly with that wording that we have in our recommendation.
Okay. I'm okay with that.
Though Councillor Jackson wants that line to move another half of the concession, the lot.
We can include the whole 200 acres if you want.
Yeah, and I don't know, again, I don't know whether we would want to do that. I think we would need to talk to the developer and understand what their goals are from the property.
Yeah.
I mean, personally, why would we put up, if it's going to be restrictive to them and what their goals are, why would we want to move those lines? You know, maybe some lines need to be moved, but I think we need to understand from the developer what they're trying to accomplish.
When can we get that done before we pass this?
Well, I think a concept has already been drawn up from the developer.
Okay, so you're going to work towards that?
Sure.
We have met with the proponent, and they have a concept, and I've also chatted with their planner a couple of weeks ago, and the recommendation was that the proponent initiate a meeting with the township to look at the options, look at what they want to do, and that's recommended that I would be at the meeting, Brian would be there as the OPA 11 person, and whoever from the township. So that's something that can be take place whenever we can get the people together.
Councillor Mackay?
Yeah, like if you didn't get that designation and everything stayed the way it was, why couldn't you build in that field anyways and hook up to what would stop you from hooking up to the sewer line?
Because it's not in the settlement designation.
Would that make a difference? Could you not just pay the hookup fee and like half the subdivision be in Cobden, the other half would be out, and they still be using the service?
The settlement area defines the areas that are to be serviced with urban services, sewer, water, and storm sewer.
Okay.
So.
And that's part of a subdivision agreement, is it not? Where those settlement areas are?
Well, the subdivision agreement is an implementation tool. It's at the more detailed design stage. So it's after you've been through all your, it's further down the process. This is the policy framework for allowing the development to occur.
Question from, we have a member from BEI here. Do I need to ask for permission for him to speak? Yeah, so the consensus from council to let BEI speak? Yes. Just grab a microphone there, Matt.
Probably while I'm here, Councillor Jackson brought it up that the council is maybe not clear what we're intending, what BEI is intending. As far as explaining what the concept is for the Bennett Farm, the intent at this time is to put in an unserviced subdivision at the back end of the farm. So it would, and it's difficult to point at a wall, but where the pink dividing line is, on the, call it the southeast,
right there,
the southeast side, we're more than happy to move that pink over as far as the property line goes for the front 2/3, which, as the mayor suggested, would coincide with the rock and the gravity fall for the property. I would think that the council would want to avoid a pumping station for the back end of that property, to have it to have it hooked into the services. Yep. Not quite, no. Take that. This line here would go over the property line, go to that far back. This back section would be furthest from the water treatment plant to the outside of that area.
And that makes sense, perfect sense to me.
In addition to that, the intent is to, and we have other thoughts in mind as far as the front of the property, both retail, commercial, recreational, parklands, etc. But then between those areas, which would be closer to the highway, and the unserviced section at the back, there would then be room for more serviced properties as well, which then is onto the water treatment plant, is onto the water system, is paying into the tax base.
Thank you, that clarifies a lot for me, and that's what I was thinking, but without knowing, I was hoping that was the case. Thank you.
Any other questions from council for Mr. Naismith from BI? No? Great, thank you. Is there any other items that anybody wants to address with the response to the two-page letter or three-page letter from JP2G? Councillor McLaughlin?
I just wanted to touch on item 13, the archaeological and the studies that are to be planned. I'm going to allude back to last week whenever you were doing the presentation on the new draft of the Renfrew County, and you want to do archaeological studies in the water. Well, to me, that makes no sense if you're talking about the Ottawa River, because we have changed the path of the Ottawa River back in 1949. So why would you even think about doing a study on that land where, if you're going to find anything, it's probably out in the middle of the river, because we've spread it out, made it bigger. It doesn't make any sense. And I don't like it. I just feel that this is a lot of money being spent to discourage developers to go ahead and develop on the Ottawa River. And I don't know where we can go. But that's one of my biggest concerns, Brian.
That's with the county plan though, right?
Well, with that part is with the county plan, but we still have to do we have total control over when there's going to be an archaeological study to be done if we adopt this? Item 13, like, I don't understand. I know what my concerns are, but I don't totally understand where the control is. So if you could explain that to me, that might solve my issue.
Chair, I'll make an attempt. The purpose, if I recall, item 13 is that what was proposed in OPA 11 is that there would be Whitewater region policies related to archaeological resources completely separate from the county plan. And the province said no. Brian had proposed, I think, basically maybe half a page of policies. For our 5-year review of the county OP, the province has proposed 4 pages of policies. They really want us to beef up this archaeological resource end of things. And it's one of these provincial issues, provincial interests. And as part of that package that they want us to take and put into our county plan is a requirement that when you're doing an archaeology study, it not only focus on the land portion, but also on the water portion, underwater portion. As far as who is the controller of it, it's the approval authority dealing with any Planning Act application. So if it was a subdivision proposal, we're the approval authority. We would have the obligation, if that was the policy, to require that. If it was a couple of severances, we typically haven't required archaeology studies for small 1 or 2 lots. But if it was a larger development proposal, they may have to do an archaeological study. And there's also, along with this, there's a primer that the province has put out that sets out when these types of studies are required, like with 300 meters of a navigable water body. So it's a pretty tightly controlled process. And we've heard concerns with the amount of work that people have to do for these types of studies. Generally, they hit the larger development proposals, like a subdivision. And when you're proposing one of those on the water body, you would have to do, you already have to do archaeological work, and in the future, you may have to do your archaeological work into the, as far into the water.
If I may, Mr. Chairman?
Yeah.
This is one of those topic areas, it's how hard do you want to go at it? That I mentioned earlier. Like, how hard do you want to challenge it for Whitewater to challenge this modification that the province is requesting? We're saying we need some support. Like, we need to bring in an expert to help us challenge the province. And some municipalities prepare archaeological master plans for their whole municipality and use that as a negotiating tool, if you will. It's like saying to the province, you know, you have your system, we'll create our own system within your system, and then you negotiate how you intend to implement archaeological matters. But in some cases, they're even more rigid. You know, some municipalities, but to challenge this position, because it's a matter of provincial interest, it'll cost you time and money. And is this a fight you want to fight, or is it a fight that you would like the county to fight for you, is the question.
Okay, I had Councillor McLaughlin first.
But I go back to my first thought, like, there's no common sense in having to do a study on the Ottawa River when we're the ones, I mean, do an archaeological study. The archaeological study is there to find archaeological items that would have been on the waterways.
Okay.
Am I correct in my assumption? That's what I'm thinking anyway. And then in 1949, we changed the water system. So, like, it just looks like you're forcing somebody who wants to develop to spend money for no good reason. And I understand what Charles is saying, and I understand if it was on Lake Ontario, I totally agree with it. But it's...
This policy would apply in the county OP to all navigable water bodies in the county. There was a case, though, in Pembroke years ago when they worked on their sewage treatment plant. There was a ship offshore that had to be looked at. They realized that some ship had sunk and the remains were offshore, and that they had to take that into account. So I even think on the Ottawa there may be some archaeological significance, but that's what they're requiring us to do.
Reeve was up next.
Yeah, gentlemen, I appreciate what you're saying, and I know the province is extremely difficult, put you guys in a difficult position in the middle. But I can't help but feel that we're sheep that are in a big corral, being led to a predetermined corral elsewhere. No matter what move we make, we're going to the same corral. And on that point, like the province, as you guys have mentioned, have put all these restrictions on us, and it's the onus is on us to fight them. I think we concur that a lot of what's being put on us is quite ridiculous. At least it is, without a lot of study, and in some cases, I think that you guys agree to that. So the point being, all the onus is on us to try and get out of some of these restrictions from the province. There's a belief in the community, right or wrong, that the county and the system maybe is not as supportive to the municipal needs as opposed to the provincial. And I'm not saying that's the case, but that's the perception. Case in point, you mentioned the 300-meter setback. You know that's a big issue for everybody. Nobody likes swallowing that pill. A lot of people don't agree with that, and that's a big thing out in the community. But yet, the government of Ontario, when they put that in place, they didn't do their signs. They didn't pay for their signs for that setback. In fact, I got a quote here from the Ontario Municipal Board Chairman David Cullman in 2005. He said, this is in reference to the 300-meter setback, they lack any scientific foundation with respect to being used as a land planning determinant for prohibiting development. That's how much they put into this. They did not do their study, yet we're living with it, and we're told we have to get our specialists, we have to pay for our people to fight this back. Yet nobody makes them answer for everything that they throw at us. And I think this is a bone of contention for a lot of people. And that was a decision, just so you know, in 2000, came from a decision 3126 on November 30th, 2005, 11 years ago. So these are concerns that the people have, and I would just like them taken into consideration when we're talking about this.
Can I try to answer? Thank you. Thank you, and thank you for the comment. On a daily basis, we spend a lot of time trying to make the provincial policies work for Renfrew County. It is an ongoing effort, and even through our county plan on things like woodlands and valley lands, we are proposing some flexible policies back to the province that we hope they'll accept. And it's almost the Endangered Species Act. We've had to deal with that to make it workable for all parties. So I understand your concern, and I hope people don't see what we do daily. I've got a red file here. It's a pre-consultation file. I get 200 of these a year, and a quarter of them are with provincial policies that we're trying to find some way to make work for us in Renfrew County. So that's my response. Thank you for the question, though. That's very good.
Is it a response to the Reeve?
Yes.
Okay. Yep. Go ahead.
Just on your 300-meter setback concern, and I share your views on that, by the way, as does Mr. Mikowski. And Mr. Mikowski, of course, has been a champion for challenging that 300-meter setback for septic system installation on new lot development. And that's why OPA 11 Muskrat Lake policies are so special, because it's the only at-capacity lake in Ontario that will be allowed to have new development that doesn't have to comply with that requirement. And it's the level of pushback that we had to undertake to get to that point was significant, but we're there.
Mayor?
Sorry, not a 300-meter setback, but a 300-meter special designation for economic development. And in fact, it's a 30-meter setback. Am I, in OP 11, is that not, we're the only people that have that, are we not, in the county plan? In the
In
province?
the province of Ontario.
But I'm correct when I say that?
Oh, yeah, this is a precedent-setting policy. It could affect development on sensitive lakes throughout the province. Like, people are waiting for this policy to come into effect.
And that 300-meter setback, the designation, that applies only to sensitive lakes or at-capacity lakes, correct?
Correct.
And at this point in time, Muskrat Lake is the only lake with that designation in Whitewater Township, correct?
It's the only sensitive lake in Whitewater, that's
Or
correct.
at-capacity lake?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Great, thank you.
And if and when OP 11 comes into effect, the county will be encouraging the province to remove Muskrat Lake from the at-capacity lake designation. At least that's what my discussion was today. I'll be supporting that.
Okay. Reeve?
So there's no, I think Charles made this clear to me in the past, but there's no avenue now to make a case for lifting what was called the at-capacity lake, which used to be called the deep trout lake, which used to be called something else, the sensitive lake. They keep changing the name.
Right.
You're saying there's no option for that now, and there's no discussion, basically, how it came into play as being designated that way in the first place.
That's a good question. And the answer is, yes, it can be challenged.
But you're back to this, eh?
Well, no, it's not a planning problem. It's the decision to manage Muskrat Lake as a lake trout lake is beyond the jurisdiction of the Township of Whitewater region.
I realize that.
So, but it's within your political, if it's your will of council politically, it's a matter you take up with the Minister of Natural Resources.
Okay, with that said, are we better doing that effort through the Renfrew County Plan in OP 11, or would there be better options? I'm looking for opinion here, by way of our own official plan, if we wanted to succeed with things like that. Do you have an opinion on that?
I think it's a matter you need to take up. I think it's more of a political matter than a planning matter, is what I think. You know, I think if there was a genuine consensus to remove, like, what you'd be asking the province is to not manage the lake for lake trout, correct? Is that what you're...
Well, we all know it's a very deep subject in regard to the trout issue and how it came to be, and I don't think there's any need of me going into that. We all know about that, but they are real issues.
Yep.
And how did we get here, and why did we get directed here are my questions. And I know that you still want to play a blame game and all that, but how do you get to where you want to be if you can't look at the past and figure out how you got to where you are?
Understood.
That's my problem with it. I know every time I bring it up, everybody looks at me like he wants to blame. I want it fixed the same as everybody else in my heart. I just want to make sure that we're on the right path, that it will get fixed.
But there's two issues there.
Okay, let's hear.
One is the water quality, and the other is the management of the lake as a lake trout lake. So when Mikowski was retained, the second issue fell off the table. He said, I can't change that. I cannot, Mikowski doesn't have a magic wand to tell the province to not manage that lake as a lake trout lake. That's how the ministry has decided to implement their policies and programs. So it's not on the table for official plan review. But the water quality is the issue. So, see, there's a connection between the lake trout, managing it for lake trout, and the policy, because if based on the oxygen level of the lake and the water quality of the lake, right? So if it's not at capacity, then you can have some development on the lake, right? But if it's at capacity, even if Muskrat Lake was not managed as a lake trout lake, it would be an at capacity lake for development because of the water quality is so poor. So it's not an issue of managing the lake, it's a water quality issue. that's why the province has allowed a policy framework that would consider some development in lieu of commitments for improving water quality.
Mayor?
I see all of the issues, I understand all the issues, but to me, our issue here is development and the ability to develop along the lake. And in OP11, we get 10 lots a year. And in the past 10 years, we have severed 10 lots. So if we can have 10 lots a year with OP11, and if we go forward in doing some active work on repairing the problem with the lake, we should at some point automatically be able to lift the designation of as at capacity. But our whole topic, Chairman, I think in this particular instance, is planning for property development, not actually the condition of the lake, although it ties into it. And we have already taken some steps as a council to work forward, and we've been having a great deal of success in the initiation and starting in the last year and a half. So I personally think if all of the things are accepted, and that's we don't know till it goes to the province and comes back, but if they're all accepted, then we have time to show with OP11 that we deserve to have OP11, if you will, and take a leadership role and work towards changing the designation and going through. But if we don't take the step politically and work forward, we're going to lose a lot of other options that we want to work towards, and that's one of them is remove that designation. And so my feeling is we have the right tools right now to have success with what I see and read and study, and so I really do think there is two issues. Again, we're going to work together on them because we have to, as we say, but we have the ability to start development. We have the ability for farmers to sell property whenever they feel like it along the edge of the river. We've got 300 meters of developable area. We've got a whole lot of things that we should be very proud that we have in Whitewater region there. So that's the end of my comment. But I think we need over the time to work on all of the things, and they're all serious, but I think we have a chance to go forward at this point.
Councillor Mackay?
Yeah, I got the feeling when we were talking to the ministers that they don't care what happened in the past. They don't give a hoot, because next year they're going to be another ministry. They just want to go ahead. And we said we can work with them, we can get that lake cleaned up. That's basically what I got from them.
So
we can fight them.
You're speaking to the meetings in Toronto?
That's right. And I got the opinion that they didn't give a hoot what happened 2 years ago or 5 years ago, because he might be a minister of something else in 2 years. So if we want to work together and clean up the lake, we had to, forget the past, just go ahead. That's what I got.
I'm just going to ask one question. So part of the Amendment 11 and going ahead with development on the lake with the 10 lots and the ability to go forward with development, my understanding is the township has to demonstrate that we are putting in some remedial remedies that or show that there's an appetite in the township to go ahead and fix the lake. So with what we know of the issues of the lake, and that a lot of the issues, there's varying percentages, but a lot of the issues reside outside of our geographical township. So if we don't see that moved, how does that impact what we show as improvements? And we can do whatever we want on the township, whether it be put in a new sewer treatment plant, put in all new septic systems around the entire lake. But we all know that there's an elephant in the room that is contributing the biggest amount of issue to the lake. So what's your response on that?
Well, that's, if I may, the beauty of the Watershed Council. And with my involvement with the Watershed Council, and I should clarify, I'm not on the board of directors of the Watershed Council. I was the director of science and water quality, and I had disclosed that with the previous council, so everybody was aware that I was involved. And but I backed off now, and I'm still on the science committee, but I'm not the director. But it's been a very, very interesting evolution, because at the outset, our biggest fear was of alienating the agricultural community. And I've been really impressed with how they're stepping forward. These people are genuine. You know, like you get the whole mix, right? But it's the kitchen table meetings. You know, I don't talk to them. We have people from the agricultural community talking to other farmers, and we're coming up with some win-win solutions. And they've been able to access in alliances with Algonquin College. That alliance has allowed them to access a lot of dollars for implementing controlled tile drainage programs that'll be a win-win. But we got a long way to go, because it's a growing thing. So you achieve that over the next year or two. There's only so much the group can do as a volunteer organization. Beauty is that they can focus, because it's a combination of fundraising, science, and agriculture. So those are the three current focuses at the moment, mostly outside of your community, so it can only benefit your community. But if you look at what's going on in southern Ontario, the money that's going to Lake Erie, like the storm ponds are being built, and municipal drains are being improved with new technologies. The money that is going down there is incredible. We're not on the radar for that type of money, and it's that next level of commitment that we need to strive for, amongst other solutions. Ultimately, there'll have to be a technological solution for the lake itself. Like, there'll have to be some kind of magic solution for treating the lake. But until you actually get a handle on the sources of the loading, it doesn't make sense to spend millions on treating the lake.
Right, Councillor Jackson?
Okay, so just to be clear, in order for people to develop around the lake, number one, we have to have the waterfront designation. Number two, we have to allow you guys to fight for the waterfront designation on Muskrat Lake. Number two, the policies have to be put into place. And then, can they develop, or does the county then have to go after the province to remove the at-capacity lake designation for Muskrat Lake? Or can you develop without removing that? Is that the steps, or like all three steps, or two and then maybe the third?
In answer to the question, I think, yeah, the label of the lake would be irrelevant if you get these policies, because it is allowing you to develop on it. Whether it's still called an at-capacity lake
won't matter, as long as the province approves 1 and 2.
Yes, the policies which they have approved.
Right, they have, and they've just made a few changes with regards to the agriculture.
Yes, yeah, well, that's the big key, though. The waterfront designation on the western shore of Muskrat.
On the western.
I mean, there was no point in Brian achieving the 10-lot rule if half the lake has got an agriculture designation on it.
Exactly.
So there's two important pieces. The province has agreed to one, and we have to deal with them on the other.
Thank you.
It'll just be called the Muskrat Lake policies. You can call it whatever you want. We can change the title if you can think of something that you prefer to call it.
I like it. Reeve?
Okay, this is off Muskrat Lake. Is a couple questions about land designation and classification I'd like to clear up. If land is designated a certain classification, does the property owner get a notification? And if so, how does he get it? If you're changing land designation classifications, is that something that occurs, and how does it handled?
That's a good question, because what happens usually is that we go through public consultation processes, and usually not a lot of people show up, or if people do show up, it's still only a small percentage of the community, and then when somebody goes to do something, they're not aware of that their property is designated a certain way. So there are statutory requirements for notification.
So they're notified directly, or
No,
just
no,
publicly
it's
to
just
come to
publicly,
the meeting
yeah.
deal? So they're not notified directly, so they could miss it, eh?
Well, that's right, I
How
agree.
long would they have to appeal it if they did catch it, or didn't catch it and discovered it? I guess that's the appeal period from the public hearing, would it be?
No, actually, with you're talking about OP 11, or
In
just
general.
generally? Well, there's a 20-day appeal period with any notice of decision.
Okay, so if
With
there's
any
a
application.
classification change, it goes in the newspaper.
Right.
It's up to the landowner to read the paper and respond within 20 days.
Or
it
there
goes through.
There could be a circulation to all property owners within 120 meters. I'm not sure which process you use.
Okay.
There's an either or. I think you probably do this, the note.
Doug, can you help answer that question with respect to, so the question is, if there's a change to the land designation, how does the landowner get notified? And apparently we may have a different process.
This is with the official plan. Correct. So, in the official plan, there'd be a notice in the paper of the official plan public meeting, and it'd be up to the landowner to search their own property and find out if it's been affected.
We'll just stay on that for 1 second. Terry, do you have any, does that satisfy you?
Sort of. So basically, a designation could change, and the system doesn't really allow. Would a lot of people come in late on this and they're not happy? I guess that's my question.
To answer that, I think what we're trying to do is meetings like this get the public aware that this is going on, and it's not the greatest way of doing it, but we have a website with our proposed official plan. We will be having 6 public meetings. We will be putting notices out. When you're talking about a change at the official plan level, not a site-specific, you are affecting a lot of property owners that would not have gotten direct notice. When it's a site-specific change, most of those are initiated by the property owner himself or herself, so they're aware of that. But when we're doing this high-level planning, and there's a lot of properties the properties that are being putting into this waterfront designation, have they all been notified? Probably not.
Yeah.
But there's been a lot of discussion around it. You folks as council are in the community. We will be having public meetings. And, you know, they don't all get direct notice. That was your question.
Just to add to that, on the flip side, there are people looking forward to seeing the OPA 11 come into effect. There are people waiting for the Muskrat Lake policies to come into effect so that they can apply for lots.
And I understand that, guys. I always said there's a lot of good things in Muskrat Lake. I just often thought there should be a lot more based on our specific township and our landscape. That's my point in all this. Is I feel that even though it's a great thing, I feel that we're being corralled just the same.
Brian, if I've talked to 100 people about this so far, I have 50 people that say, what are you doing? Get this thing approved, push it through. And I have 50 that say, what the heck are you guys even thinking? And it is split right down the center. It's a real tough issue. Yeah, it is. Mayor?
Now, I might be quite unpopular by asking this question, but I agree 100% with Reeve Miller in that anything could happen to anybody's land without them actually knowing. Is there not something we can put in place that would be within the realms of reasonable to notify all the people, that we could make as a policy that's not like that we could actually implement? Like, I don't even know the answer to that. All I know is it's probably way beyond what we can do, but I agree with Reeve Miller 100%. If you go to do something on your land, you find out it's not even designated what you thought it was when you go to proceed. Just because not everybody gets the paper, not everybody reads the paper, not everybody feels like going to public meetings, but yet they still own land. And it's just, I agree 100%. That's a very big concern for me too.
Councillor Jackson's going to help you out with this, I think.
Okay.
I think, and I could be wrong, but I think each individual property then would have to be notified what their designation was before and what their designation will be with OPA 11, and it becomes very difficult administratively, and that's why it is up to property owners, and I can't stress that enough. If you have a concern and you think you might be in a designation that you don't want to be, you have to come out to those public meetings, and if you don't, in the future, unfortunately, it may cost you to make a change in that designation. It's extremely important for the public, and notification is always going out. Maybe with the final tax bill this year, a notice can go out in the newsletter to state that, when the public meetings are going to be held, if there are any other further public meetings, and in the paper, and maybe even advertise on the radio. But I think it also has to be an important announcement. Basically pay attention. It's your property. You have care and control of the property, and you have to find those answers out, unfortunately, because it becomes an administrative nightmare and there's how many pieces of property in Whitewater region. There's probably 5,000 tax bills that go out. You're not going to send 5,000 letters with, okay, this was your designation, this is your designation. Do you understand the difference? Do you understand what, the explanation means, what you can and cannot do? It's up to each individual property owner.
Feeling we're going to get good press coverage on this as well, so maybe they can help out. Reeve?
Okay, I agree totally with Councillor Jackson. I'm not just totally sure if she's referring to the Renfrew County plan meetings that are scheduled, the 6 of them, or are you referring to proposed Amendment 11 consultation public? Because I'm all for that, and and for that very reason that Charlene said, that I think we need to have both the county plan, which Charles is already arranging, and also a similar program for OP11, a big awareness program, and then I think we'll be going down the right path.
I think those public meetings already occurred. They were already occurred, the public meetings. I don't know if there's any scheduled plans for OPA 11 further.
Can I address that? No, we've had the public meetings for OPA 11, and they were well attended. With respect to the county OP, we've got Cobden on our list. We just haven't got a date. We got to wait till we get through county council. And if our date lines up with when you send your tax bill out, you could send in your tax bill a notice that the county is updating the county Renfrew official plan, and if you're living in Whitewater region, you might want to come to the Cobden meeting, or any of the meetings, actually. We haven't got the dates for them, and I don't know when your tax bills go out.
Do you have an idea of the timelines?
We're looking at May, June, July area.
And it's the same designations as what's here in OPA 11 is what's in the county.
Well, there'll be some changes.
Right.
Yeah, so it'll be important for our process for people to be aware.
I had the mayor and then the Reeve.
I have already asked the process of doing this. Already asked in the process that we have followed for our official plan OP 11 that we have at least one public meeting to explain to everybody what we have done, and so they understand. And so I still would like to see that we do that. Central location for that, if we're going to have the one in Cobden, then we should have the other one in another location. That's only fair to the people of the township. But I really feel firmly that we need to have a meeting where people can actually ask questions, not a free-for-all, just ask questions, and hopefully a little shorter than we're going to be taking you through tonight. But people have the right to know, and I know that in the Ontario government the approach is we have the obligation to know, which means we have to look, but I personally feel we have an obligation to bring the information forward too. So I still would like to continue on with that series, this in a public meeting when we've decided.
Yep. I have we have a recommendation for council to consider in a resolution form. And that essentially authorizes staff to take the letter that we reviewed tonight and to meet with and present it and more or less get it fine tune it to get it and then bring it back to council. So that could be done concurrently with any other. Like I wouldn't want to wait to do that and then have an open house or whatever you want to have. You know what I mean? If you want to have some more consultation, it could be done concurrently.
My intention is to explain what we've done, so people understand.
Okay.
Not so much to go forward, because I think it's more of an issue to explain what we have achieved and what we've done, so that there's an understanding in that meeting.
Reeve?
I have to agree with the mayor on that one. I realize that you've went through the due process in the past. I think a lot of years have passed, perhaps, since then, maybe not a lot. And I think perceptions out there need to be put back, answered to the public, and this brought forward again one more go, even in spite of the past efforts, because there's those in the community that have problems with the way that was all handled. Right or wrong doesn't matter. I think we gotta readdress it to clarify totally that they understand exactly what we're doing, and that's what I would support.
Councillor Rieger?
And I would support that as well. But the last thing that we want is the same free-for-all that we had a few years back in the Cotton Agricultural Hall. We know where that went. So, I mean, that's okay. I mean, if you want to update the public, I'm all about that. But we've got to, it will be not what we did, not what we were going to do, but what it is now, and move forward. And there'll be no blame. There will be no in your face. It'll be just an update, and that's all it would be. And I would support that, and that's the only way I'd support it.
Right, Councillor Jackson, and then the CAO.
I agree with Councillor Rieger, and I was kind of thinking of more of a, relaxed open house. And I know Charles had mentioned with regards to the county that, a staff member might be available. And maybe it's just as simple bringing, a staff member here and being able to access the mapping to say, okay, if you have a concern with your designation, come in on such and such a date. I don't think we have to reiterate everything again in an open meeting, but to have the ability for a property owner to come in and ask the question about a certain designation if their designation has changed. I know you had mentioned that last week with regards to the official plan, that there would be somebody available. I don't really feel the need that we have to go in and discuss any changes. This is where we're going, and it's already been passed and approved by the county. It's not a new plan. It's not to come up again. These are the issues that the ministry, the province has come back and identified, and these are whether or not we're going to move forward with their recommendations, or if we're going to stick to what was in OPA 11 and have staff go back and fight for those issues for the Township of Whitewater Region. And to me, it's everything. We're not opening everything else up.
CAO.
I'd like to suggest that in terms of the timeline, since frighteningly it's already mid-April, that we tee up a meeting of that nature with the staff expertise and the mapping available. We've done something similar before, and it's worked very well in June before we get into summer holidays and people are away. It's very difficult to get people out once we get into summer vacation time. So if you are in agreement, I'll have a look at the schedule and see perhaps the Ag Hall was a good venue before, but again, without it being, if that's your direction to me. Oh yes, you had wanted to have it in Beachburg in a central location, and to have it of a informal nature where it wasn't a formal, you take your number and come to the queue and speak in the microphone, but that you can access staff and mapping.
Mayor?
Yes, my intention is that we can explain what we have done. We're not changing anything with this, we're just explaining. Like somebody might have a question of how does that affect this or how does that affect that, and we could try and answer that. Another way of doing it is just have, how we did our environmental study for the sewer plant. We simply have, an open house with the, around the boards, and have different people man them and explain questions. Informal, no shouting, screaming, or whatever, and whatever. I just think we need to explain.
Got it. Am I good there? If you're going to do this, which is okay, we should meet with the province before, so we know we're not in this sort of a transition period. We aren't sure how they're going to stand with these waterfront designations. So June, if June is what you want, we can work with that, but we'd have to get onto the province really, really fast. And we'll arrange that.
It's 1 minute to 12.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments from either side? So we have a member of the audience that would like to speak. Again, would look for consensus from council to allow them to speak. Consensus? Okay. Actually, could you come up to the microphone at the front? Just turn on, maybe.
Is it on?
Yeah,
okay.
thank you.
I'd just like to know with the wetlands, at what stage when land is designated as wetlands, then it changes to provincial significant wetlands? How does that change? And how does that affect the property owner?
I can try to answer that with respect to provincially significant wetlands. Those are wetlands that the province has evaluated by a provincial biologist following a set of criteria. And I don't know what their notification process is. I don't know what the impact on taxation is. I know from a planning point of view, when it's designated provincially significant wetland, provincial policy statement policies kick in, no development in a PSW, and no development within 120 meters unless you do some kind of environmental impact study to demonstrate there's no impact. But a PSW, I don't know how many there are in the township. There are two? There's quite a few. There's Little Lakes, there's Snake River, Muskrat, there's Bellows Bay. There's at least 4. So there's the Westmeath Bog. That's that dark purple color?
That's the Westmeath Bog.
Oh, sorry. That's a very similar
And then
color.
there's Bellows Bay up here.
Bellows Bay, that's what I'm trying to find.
And then there's, I'm not sure what that one is, but.
And then there's Snake River.
And then there's the Snake River, and then there's Little Lakes.
And then there's Muskrat. I think even this, the Muskrat Lake Complex, I think, just to the east.
That's right here.
Yeah.
Yep. Correct.
I'd have to look at the colors on that map, but I know those are the main areas. So I don't know if there's any others in the township, Brian, if you scroll down. That's pretty well.
Oh, and then there's the Cobden wetland.
Okay, so there is an evaluation process. What impact from, as I explained, from a Planning Act application, I think I've explained that. I think if you had, taxation, and so I don't know what the implications are with respect to that.
Well, I think you can get a tax exemption.
Okay, well,
Any other questions from council? Or since we've allowed 2 members of the public, is there any questions from any other member? If not, I have a resolution. Moved by Councillor McLaughlin, seconded by Councillor Jackson. Be it resolved, the Planning Committee of the Township Whitewater Region recommends to Council that staff be directed to meet and respond to the Ministry of Municipal Affairs and Housing regarding modifications to OPA 11, and report back to Council. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. And I think that was it. Thank you guys for coming out. Appreciate that. It's obviously very, very deep subject and touching a lot of our ratepayers as well as council members. So a lot of tough questions to answer. So really appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Moved by Charlene Jackson, seconded by Darrell McLaughlin, be it resolved that the Council and Committee of Township of Whitewater Region adjourns the April 13th, 2016 meeting at you can't go 7 minutes to 8.
You have to go Whitewater time.
7:50. 1 now. All those in favor? Opposed, if any? Thanks, Darrell.